Alright, so have you ever noticed how sometimes the more you want to do something, the harder it seems to get yourself to do it? Like the things that we really covet, that we really love doing, that give us a sense of flow, sometimes are also the spaces in which it's just so easy for us to get stuck. You can't access the right feelings. You can't seem to be able to sit yourself down and get yourself to the task. For me, it happens with a bunch of different things. For example, with drawing or with playing music in particular, the longer I go without doing it, the harder it is for me to get myself back and just going at it. And what's funny is that sometimes the tendency is to think, oh, you know what we really need? Harder deadlines, a more rigid approach. That's really what's gonna get you. You gotta push through to kind of get going. Or instead we kind of go the other side of the pendulum swing and we go, I'm just gonna go with the flow and like just see what happens, and then you end up kind of floundering about and like procrastinating and not really doing the thing. If any of that sounds familiar, I think I have something that might really help out. So many things have been said about flow, right? It's this seemingly transcendent space where we're somewhere between surrender and letting go and like engagement and being focused. It's a space where we like forget about ourselves, and it's often where we feel that we do our best work or where we have breakthroughs and kind of push past our goals. Of course, it's also a thing that we love to chase after because it makes us feel more productive, man. And so in today's video, I wanted to share with you an idea that has really helped me cultivate like a more reliable and healthy relationship with the idea of flow, and specifically with figuring out how I can get myself in the groove more easily. It's a concept that I like to call like creative structures. It's not rigid discipline. It's also not fuck it, you know? It's something in between. Just bear with me for a second. When I was a kid, flow was something that I never thought about, but I experienced it all the time. I love drawing, and I could spend hours getting myself lost between paper, pencil, my mind, just playing around, right? And at some point I decided I wanted to get like really good at it. I went to school, I spent years studying how to draw. I went to art school for high school, for middle school, for college. I started to have big expectations about what I should do with my art. It started to become my aspiration for a career. And I made a lot of breakthroughs. I learned a lot. And at some point, I just hit a terrible wall. I'm sure you have a thing that you've hit a terrible wall with. Whether it's small or big, whether it's writing or playing a sport or getting yourself to the gym or cooking, it doesn't really matter, right? There's these things that we start out in a very playful space and we learn to love, and then one day, it's just impossible to get yourself in that feeling. Like, what changed? When I was in my 20s, I had not played a single note of music in my life. I had always wanted to, but I never really had the courage to do it, and so being stuck as I was, I decided to just start messing around in the piano. I had no expectations of myself because, hey, I didn't spend my whole life studying this, so I'm just a fool, right? And what did I find? The same feeling that I had when I was a child. I could spend hours, and I really mean hours, getting lost, playing around. Like, I didn't even know music theory, I didn't know how to read. I just liked toying with the sounds and exploring myself, and it was fantastic. And then, one day, I decided that I wanted to make music a more important part of my life. And I took a couple of classes, and then I said, man, I want to make music for real. And what did I find? Stuck again, hit this big wall. Now, I'm running out of things that I could jump to, man, that I could like escape to not experience this wall. Now, as an adult, I've really found myself needing to break past this experience. And this experience really led me to think a lot about, what is this thing? What is this relationship between flow and diligence? And why is it so fragile? You know, when we start or when we're new to something, all we have is play. We don't know where we're going. We don't have an aim or a specific goal. We're just exploring a possibility space. Everything that you can do feels new, and our curiosity is naturally stimulated. But as we go down the route of learning how something works, it's part of our nature that we start to create these little grooves for how we relate to the experience that we're having. We begin to develop our desire to express ourselves through the activity. Now I want to use those things to achieve an actual specific goal. Now you're actually doing something that is so seemingly opposite to that initial experience of play. You're trying to drive your efforts towards something. You're trying to maybe cluster your abilities and be like, oh, in order to create that really cool illustration or to write that wonderful novel or to convey that deep emotion, I have to get better at singing on pitch. I have to learn how to write a setting. I have to learn something about figure drawing and anatomy. And so by way of wanting to achieve or create something out of our playful experience, we begin to drive ourselves into a sense of structure. Like, okay, like what are the things that I've learned and how can I repeat those things to then create the same experience? But this is a very different experience emotionally, right? Like you're now like, oh, I need to replicate this thing that I did before and I need to do it a bunch of times to make something bigger of it. And it's quite challenging, right? What we need is to understand the dynamics of flow, this relationship between play and structure, so that we can use it as our needs demand. I learned all this stuff because I studied game design. There's a whole field of study that looks at human behavior through the lens of playfulness. When we play games, what we're actually doing is willingly submit ourselves to limiting our possibilities. What we gain in return is actually a sort of liberation, a sort of sense of, okay, cool, I don't have to think about everything that's possible. I have to work inside of this space. And what it tends to do is it tends to trigger, then again, that mechanism that makes us go, okay, well, how can I express myself inside of this bubble? While we're agreeing to the rules, our mind is disrupted from the usual way that it goes about things and is forced to kind of like express itself in new ways. But it comes through the creation of structures. What we're trying to do every day is get to that place that we were when we didn't know anything about the activity, that beginner's mindset when everything is fresh and new again. Before I leave you with this big idea in the abstract, I'll tell you how this works for me in a very practical sense. A common one that I use all the time is like, if I'm really struggling to draw, like I might like pick a new random music album and I'll tell myself the rule is I have to draw for as long as the album is playing. That's a structure in itself. It's like, it's something that gives my mind a channel to like kind of follow my decisions. Like, okay, I gotta be drawing. But it also gives me a lot of freedom because inside of that, it doesn't really matter what I'm doing. If I'm just doodling, it's just I can just feel good about the fact that I'm sticking to my commitment. So that's a little creative structure I might use, and you could just come up with endless ideas for this. If you hadn't thought about it this way, I encourage you to think about that next time you get stuck. Like, what's a little rule or a thing that I could agree to in order to get myself going for the day? If you're like me and you struggle with this pendulum swing of like getting too rigid and like getting too loose and not knowing what to do, then I think this idea could be really helpful. Like understanding that it's not the specific rules that you set up, but that you actually have control over the structure that you create is a creative act in itself, and it can kind of help you stay fresh. I hope that's useful to you. If you do something similar or if you've tried this before, please let me know in the comments if what are the kinds of structures or things that you do to give yourself some support when you're trying to get back into your own flow. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It would be huge if you want to have more of these kinds of conversations and go on more art adventures with me. Then this is what this channel is all about. Alright, I hope you're staying inspired. Go out there and do whatever the thing is that you love to do, and I'll see you on the next video. Ciao!